because Elizabeth Glazier was my neighbor. And Elizabeth was a woman who got AIDS from a blood transfusion. And we on our street, which was a street called Mandeville Canyon, started a fair, which was a pediatric AIDS fair. And it was the Elizabeth Glazier Foundation, which ultimately became a very large pediatric AIDS foundation that still, even after Elizabeth's death, is a very big foundation that I continue to work on with our family pediatrician, Dr. Waldstein. So I began working there before 20 years ago when I started with AMFAR.
There is always a feel that when important and recognized Hollywood actors and actresses get involved in this sort of campaign.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Just for a couple minutes so that I can hear him.
I'm trying to raise my voice, but clearly I'm not doing a good job at it. Thank you, Sharon. No, I mean, there's always a feel that when actors and actresses decide to back a cause, there's always sort of a publicity stunt behind it, that people don't really feel that what they're doing is important. But I've seen you yesterday with Dr. Hawa Abdi, and I saw you today during our session, how you were taking notes, how you were really involved in what she was telling you. So, are you really, is it something that really you feel inside yourself doing what you're doing?
20 years would be a really long publicity stunt.
Right. And you raised hundreds of millions of dollars, so I think that
those things outside of your own life and your own experience and your own boundaries, it will end up in your backyard. And what I've learned over the last 20 years of traveling all over the globe, and I mean into countries where people do not want to admit or experience the fact that there are AIDS in their country, where the mere discussion of AIDS is against their religion, or the discussion that you could have a discussion of an illness that's sexually transmitted is so taboo. We've come to discuss it as a family concern. Because as my mother says, there is no family left that has not been touched by AIDS, whether it's your friend, your co-worker, or your family member. Now that 40 million people have died of AIDS, and 39 million people still live with AIDS, we understand that this is a global concern. And I think it was so much more relevant to me once because at AMFAR we raised the money to give to scientific research. And so, I mean, the majority of the life-extending drugs AMFAR has funded the research for. So when we funded the research for and developed nevirapine, which is the drug that stops AIDS to transfer from mother to child through pregnancy, through birth, I began to really understand how much it is not just about AIDS, because then, particularly in third world countries, a mother might not give her child AIDS through birth, but then when that AIDS-free child is born, that mother has to then feed her child. So that third world impoverished baby has to either be breastfed, because the mother has no way of feeding that child, and then would pass AIDS through the breast milk, or the mother's mixing powdered breast milk with cholera-infested water. I had a couple of years of recovery where I had to reabsorb all of the internal bleeding into my head and face and spine and so forth. So I didn't realize anything right away because I lost my short-term memory and quite a bit of my long-term memory and my ability to speak without stuttering and see. I couldn't read for 2 years. I lost my directional hearing in my right ear. I lost the feeling in part of my left leg. I couldn't walk at first.
You must have thought this is the end for you. I mean, for an actress like you, it's like dying.
Well, it was certainly the end of my career, but your career is not really the first thing you're thinking about at that time. It was a long journey back, but it was not a journey back to where I was before. It was a journey forward to something quite different and something quite a bit more profound. And I was in bed after maybe a year, and my son, my toddler son, came into the bedroom and pushed over the fireplace tools and said, "No more jammies, Mommy." Left that hasn't been absolutely wounded, deeply and profoundly wounded by loss, by heartache, by national or personal pain. It's what we do with that. Do we look at that pain as though it gives us permission to live in a wild, savage way? Or do we look at it like it's our baby, like that pain is something that we need to nurture and love and guide it, like we do every one of our senses, like our sight, our touch, our smell, and then we guide that pain to make us stronger, more beautiful, more thoughtful, more interesting, and more intelligent in the way that we choose to reform and rebuild and use that wound as something that guides us to be better, more profound, more generous, more compassionate, more available to create the world as we want it to be now. I feel a school from over here. Anyone? Anybody over here? Can you build a school, sir? Anybody? Anybody out here want to build a school?
Come on.
Anybody else?